Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer. I'm with CUGC HQ, and I'm so happy to welcome you to our second session of Ask Me Anything. Today, we have IGEL and ControlUp with us, and it's going to be interesting, I know, based on the questions that you guys have already sent in. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping details for you. We are recording today's session and you will get a link to that recording. It will come in an email from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. And yeah, just watch out for that. You can check your spam filter if that's where those emails go. Also, a lot of you submitted questions when you registered, but in case you didn't, you can submit them at any time. And if you didn't submit questions or if you think of more questions, just feel free to type them in the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on that and we'll get to as many as we can today. And finally, at the very end, I have an exit survey for you. It's short and anonymous, and it's just for CUGC. We just like to get your feedback on all of our webinars. All right, so who do we have? We have Shane Kleinert. He's going to be moderating all
that mug.
Shane
was pre the shave down.
He's a CTP and he's a leader of our South Florida CUGC group. So thank you, Shane, for being back on today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
And from IGEL, we have Mike Barmondi and Carl Garish. Say hello.
Hey, everybody.
And if you were on our first AMA, you probably recognize Mike from the first one.
I'm sorry, by the way. So.
Yeah, we're lucky. They asked us back. They had no one else to ask. So
no, they didn't.
Yeah,
they upgraded with Carl, but not with me. So.
I don't know if that's an upgrade or not, but glad to be here as well. Former Citrix, now with IGEL. So.
Thank you. And we also have Trenton Tai from ControlUp. He is also a CTP, and if you've been to our webinars in the past, you've seen his face or heard his voice. We don't usually share cameras on all those webinars, but there he is.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, well, I am going to turn everything over to you guys. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn off my camera, and I will be back later on with t-shirt giveaways.
All right.
And we'll
cool.
close things up. So have fun, everyone.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Feel free to pop in and out anytime with the video. Surprise us. Appreciate it. So thank you everyone again for joining. We're excited. This is number 2 of Ask Me Anything. So me being the 3 panelists, I guess you could throw one in there for myself, but we already have the questions, so I won't answer them. So we're gonna get started. I think would be cool. I'm really excited today because we got 2 really awesome companies on. Both companies that I personally worked with for a long time. I've known for many years, and they've recently had just an awesome partnership, some collaboration. So if you guys don't mind, before we get into kind of these, there's a bunch of questions. We got really cool questions. I think it'd be cool just to spend maybe each of you, because you guys are really leaders in your space, in my opinion. You know, and I don't know what that's worth, probably nothing. But you know, with that said, I think it's important. A lot of people probably know who you are, but there might be a few people that maybe haven't heard of you. So maybe just an elevator, you know, a 30-second pitch of who you are, and then maybe just I guess one of you guys just point on, you know, what is this collaboration and the recent announcement that you guys kind of put out there about what you guys did, and we'll get rolling into the questions.
All right,
Sure.
great. I'll kick things off.
Yeah.
Guy. So my name's Carl Gersh. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing here at IGEL. Prior to IGEL, I spent 5 years at Forthright Technology Partners, which was a Citrix Platinum and IGEL Platinum partner down here in South Florida, so neighbors with the Shane. Before that, 5 years at Citrix in a variety of roles in field and channel. So, you know, joined IGEL beginning this year, and, you know, getting a great opportunity just to enhance my network, get a chance to talk to a lot of people about, you know, what we're doing with IGEL and kind of the future of, you know, intelligent workspaces and VDI.
Cool.
Yeah, so you know, with ControlUp, at least with regards to IGEL, we've just introduced a new feature. It was back in January, I believe, where we now can integrate in with IGEL by leveraging their custom partition feature. So we can install some bits that allow us to connect in and actually monitor IGEL endpoints, which is I actually think pretty exciting because it's kind of the missing piece of the puzzle that's around the whole monitoring story and understanding the performance of your infrastructure. So now we get that end-to-end visibility. So that's essentially what's new recently, and obviously we're working on developing this partnership further as it goes forward, including hopefully integrating the custom partition bits directly into the IGEL operating system, so a custom partition won't be needed anymore. And then on our side in ControlUp, obviously we'll be making IGEL a first-party supported operating system for ControlUp. It is now, but right now it's detected as an unsupported operating system, but we will be changing that.
Awesome. And so what kind of, just for the folks that are out there, I mean, just a few data points of what you can actually get. Is there an extra license that's required for something like that to be able to add in just an additional endpoint seen as like another connection, just like you would have like a virtual desktop at that point, or, you know, and what kind of data can you get from that you see as valuable?
Yeah, so I think there's two licensing parts here. One is something that IGEL has done, and I think they announced it back in Disrupt in Nashville in January, where the custom partition is now included with the operating system. I guess, Carl, I'll let you guys, and Mike, I'll let you guys speak to that part. But that's a really exciting part, because now, you know, the IGEL devices can be almost customized to your heart's extent, which is really exciting. And then from the ControlUp side, what you get by connecting in and monitoring it is, like an example of what we had in one of our previous webinars, we enabled browser content redirection, right? Or it's one of the features that Citrix allows you to have that puts the processing on the endpoint for rendering web pages and stuff like that. And so what is the cost of that to the endpoint? Does your endpoint even have enough CPU power, right? Like, you know, IGEL is great in the sense that you can repurpose old hardware, but if you know, you're streaming videos down that require H.265 encoding maybe, and that hardware doesn't have it, now you're putting that extra CPU load on there. You don't know what that looks like until you have ControlUp connect in and you can see that CPU utilization. So it's a way that with changing all these policy settings, that ControlUp can actually give you that information now.
Yeah, and Trent, just sorry, I was going to say, and Mike, we haven't given you a chance to introduce yourself.
I'm just listening.
Mike, why don't you do your introduction? There's a few quick things that Trenton said I wanted to build off of, but
no, continue on Trenton's piece. Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, and this is Mike Morandi. So just real quick, because I know joining IGEL, one of the things we talked about a lot, even prior when I was at the partners, is what is IGEL, right? Because I think, you know, we've been around 20 years. For a good 15 of those 20 years, we were a thin client company, meaning you purchase a thin client. It had embedded operating system and all the hardware. About 5 years ago, we made a pivot and we became an operating system company, in which we took the operating system that was driving those thin clients, we extracted it out, we made it available for sale, like you could purchase any other operating system. As a marketer, I'll confess to this crowd that, you know, I think some of the position was a little funny though, because we would talk about, you know, our operating system, but we wouldn't say you install it, we'd say you convert a device, right? But it wasn't converting. You don't convert a device to Windows when you install Windows, you just install Windows, right? So the IGEL OS you can install. Now, why would you want to install it? Well, it's designed specifically for, you know, cloud workspaces, VDI, right? It is an ultra secure client for those. The security part is important because Trenton mentioned something called a custom partition. I know that, you know, some people in the audience may have been like, oh, all right, what, sure, but let's talk about that real quick, right? So there are a few key features that make IGEL ultra secure. First and foremost is read only. So that's great. Now it's a full operating system. It comes with over 90 integrations, but it is a read-only operating system, which means no one can monkey with it. The challenge is we look to expand the ecosystem or be able to bring in custom capabilities like the emerging relationship with ControlUp. You know, then, you know, our ultimate goal is to build the ControlUp capabilities into the core operating system, but that takes time. So we've created what's called a custom partition, which allows you to bring capabilities in like ControlUp connections, or say another browser, right? We go, you know, when you get the IGEL OS, it comes with Firefox. If you want to run Chrome because you just have a ton of RAM that you want to blow through for opening 5 tabs, you can put Chrome in the custom partition. So just because it's a read-only operating system is ultra secure, it doesn't mean that we're going to limit you with the capabilities to add other things like custom apps and so on and so forth. So what we've announced with ControlUp is that, you know, stage 1, as it were, is that we've built in these connectors with ControlUp so that you can manage all the way down to that endpoint using the ControlUp suite. Stage 2 will obviously be building ControlUp, those hooks into the core OS, which, you know, hopefully we expect to see, you know, in over the next coming quarters. So just a little kind of high level. Again, you know, you can get IGEL on devices. You can buy our thin clients. They're the best in business. They come with a 5-year warranty. They are the Mercedes-Benz of thin clients. But we see a ton of growth where people are purchasing our software and using it and installing it. You can install it on other thin clients, you can install it on PCs and the like. And that's where, that's kind of the growth. So we are, I look at the next era of computing or all around, cloud delivered desktops and apps. You need an OS for that. IGEL is well positioned to be that OS. I'll stop the marketing pitch now, but I just want to kind of set that high level.
No, that's good. I mean, it's kind of, it's just through our kind of organic conversation here. We already answered like 4 questions. So that's kind of, that was all planned, by the way. Good job, gentlemen. Yeah, no, it was awesome. So to kind of tie into some of the things that were asked, one of the questions was about the conversion software. How are your customers converting their environment today, and what value is it providing for them to be able to convert and reuse those endpoints in the environment? Kind of 30 seconds on that, and then I want to ask a follow-up question about, because you talked about different endpoints. There's a question here about Chrome compatibility. Is there a Chrome agent coming? If you can just follow up with that, would be good.
Mike, why don't I'll do the first part and then hand up to Chrome. You can go to Chrome. So, and I'll make an analogy here. When people look at Citrix versus Horizon, a lot of times they say to us at Citrix, they say, well, Horizon's free. VMware gave it away if you essentially use ESX. And they say, so how is it more cost effective to use Citrix? And what we would say is that you're never going to do full VDI across the board wall to wall. That'd be insane. The amount of resources you need to have in your data center to support VDI for every single end user doesn't make sense from a cost standpoint, right? The total cost of ownership. So when you look at Citrix, the benefit is that you can do this, you can deploy the appropriate method, paradigm, right? It could be VDI for those power users. It could be a shared desktop for, your task workers. And when you look at that blended cost, you get a much better overall total cost of ownership. So I say the same with IGEL. When we look at the conversion software, we're seeing is that we see that with clients, most clients don't need to buy wall-to-wall new thin clients for everybody. So part of the way clients can optimize that investment in the endpoint is to say, all right, let me look at my use cases. I've got users that I want to just use a UD Pocket, right, which is under $200. You plug it right into your laptop or or desktop. You run the OS off of this, and this is great. So for $200, for those road warriors who need to get into their virtual environment but also want to keep stuff on their system, the UD Pocket is a great use case. A great solution for that use case. For the task workers that are just in a call center or whatever else, convert old devices, right? Get additional usage out of that. In that case, you're just paying for the software license. And then for people where they don't have a device at all, and it fits the model for them to have a thin client, you can purchase the thin client. And we have 3 different levels of thin client based on that. So you look at that blended cost of, okay, I want to buy X number of licenses to convert old devices. I'm going to buy X number of UD Pockets for that use case. I'm going to buy X number of thin clients. What you find is that the total cost of ownership, first of all, is well matched to the use, and its overall tends to be a lot lower. Plus, you can manage all those and then through a centralized location. So that's where I think we're seeing software's grown a lot for us, right? It's our top growing area, but but it's not to say that we're not selling a ton of thin clients as well. It's just that we weren't selling software 6 years ago. So, but I think it's that flexibility. The same way you can deploy, Zen app or Citrix apps. You can run Citrix desktops and you can run like a shared desktop and everything in between to optimize your Citrix deployment. IGEL gives you the same flexibility for the endpoint.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, we've seen a lot of customers using that and trying to get their the most out of the hardware that they have purchased and be able to convert those and use those and convert them into appliances. So we do a lot of that and definitely seeing more of that as people try to save and renew their budget, because typically they have refresh cycles, right, where they already have money allocated for endpoints. So that makes a lot of sense there. And I guess just hit on that Chrome question, and then I want to pop over to Trenton. I got some questions on ControlUp, which we'll ask from the sheet to make sure that they're answered. And let me actually take a second to see if there's any questions coming in. So there was a quick question. Will Microsoft support Microsoft Edge? That just came in. That's hot off the press. So we'll just fire that in there.
Edge?
Yeah, so I'm assuming, I guess for the Windows-based OS, do you guys still do that on the Windows side? Do you still have a Windows embedded? Or like, I think it's Windows IoT, right?
Are you saying does IGEL support a Windows embedded installation versus IGEL OS? Is that the question?
Yeah. Well, the question was just in general. Will IGEL support Microsoft Edge?
Yeah. So Microsoft Edge right now has a Linux version in preview. That Linux version I don't think is out yet. Yeah, and we could sideload it in a custom partition when it's GA.
Okay.
The same way we did Teams
Okay,
was
perfect.
similar, right? Teams came out and we got Teams as soon as the Linux client was available. We put Teams in a custom partition. Mike, do you want to talk a little about Chrome? We do see a lot of users deploying Chrome through custom partition.
So we're talking about Chromebooks, right? Not Chrome, the web browser, correct?
So yeah, that is Chromebooks. That's correct.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Chrome OS.
So quick answer is no. IGEL today doesn't do anything with Chromebooks. And look, Chromebooks fit a particular niche, right? They're focused on an educational system with an inexpensive device that allows that to kind of really, allow those end users to use it succinctly and to use some SaaS-based apps. That's awesome. Chrome has its niche. Chromebooks have their niche. They're great. So a couple of things around that, and really specifically around ControlUp, which will leverage what Trenton's about to talk about, which is number one, that end-to-end visibility and user experience. Chrome, that's not complete on a Chromebook, right? It's really hard to say, hey, is this person using Chromebook having that end-to-end kind of user experience? And obviously ControlUp with IGEL can offer that in more of an enterprise managed environment. Obviously Chromebooks have management as well. The other piece around that that's really powerful is the fact that a Chromebook, right, it's an inexpensive device in an enterprise setting. Typically, there's devices, as Carl's alluded to, and we kind of all know, if you know the IGEL story, which is you can repurpose, right, old laptops and old devices and have them run IGEL and run your apps just fine. So even in that scenario, again, Carl alluded to this, your total cost of ownership is pretty succinct, if not lower, with IGEL, because you're able to repurpose those enterprise devices you're not using with IGEL rather than use the Chromebook pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a webinar yesterday with some of the guys from the Citrix Midwest team, and they ran the entire presentation off a 10-year-old Lenovo that they had essentially installed or converted, depending on how you want to call it, but installed the IGEL OS on that device. So it was an IGEL OS, laptop essentially. But I mean, the original laptop was, again, it was a 10-year-old, I think, Carbon Lenovo. So he ran the entire, he was in his intelligent workspace, ran the entire presentation off of it, did demos and everything like that. So sometimes people, so go online, buy a bunch of, for $50 each, buy a bunch of stuff off of Depot, and you can convert them, and you'll have something better than a Chromebook. Because Chromebooks aren't that cheap anymore either. I mean, I looked into one just for fun. It's like, I mean, you're a few $100, so it's hard to find a good like sub 200 Chromebook. I'm sure someone will pop one into chat now, but.
Do we lose Shane? Hey, Shane, are you on mute, bud?
Audio.
Yeah, that was me on mute. That was amateur 101. My dog's like in the background, like ringing the bells to go out and stuff. He doesn't understand that I'm a moderator. Big deal here on a webinar.
Don't you know who you are?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So basically, so for Trenton, a couple kind of just quick questions, and I'm kind of curious on some of this as well. I know you have a new release coming out. Is there any support that's coming out for monitoring directly to Citrix Cloud? So getting support out of Citrix Cloud or Azure, adding those as kind of native objects for monitoring into ControlUp.
Yeah, we've heard pretty much, we've heard loud and clear that Citrix Cloud is an on-demand feature, is a feature that's in demand. And same with monitoring for the Azure cloud and managing the Azure resources that you might have up there. So I guess I'll just kind of drop something. We're working on integrating Citrix Cloud today. We actually have a developer build of ControlUp that connects into Citrix Cloud. We've engaged some of our customers to test it and take a look at the features and get some feedback. So that's something that we've actually executed on. So that's kind of where we are today. We don't have like a release plan or anything that I can share outside of that, but we are working on it. For Azure is a bit more of a complex story. Obviously, we do connect into web resources today with like AWS, and we are working on the Azure integration as well. And ControlUp as an organization, we have to direct our development resources to the features that customers are demanding the most. And so I believe our most prominent feature that we're working on is Citrix Cloud integration.
Cool. I don't know if
Jane went to let the dog up, but why don't we? There were one of the questions that came through. People were asking around kind of the ControlUp agent, what you can measure, with integration with IGEL. So maybe it's a good time to kind of venture into that. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So for our Linux devices, we actually do agentless monitoring. So in order to connect in, what we're doing is we're actually executing an SSH session. So we're using Secure Shell, connecting in with some credentials that you can specify in the IGEL UMS and deploy it to your machines. And then from there, we execute a series of diagnostic commands where we can pull out our information to display in the console. So that's how the integration works. So it's completely agentless as of today. The custom partition bits are to install the needed utilities we need to get the information that ControlUp requires to display in the console.
I think as we're seeing more, people are working from home, right? So they're on different devices coming in over different networks. The help desk needs go up significantly versus, kind of having a homogenized environment where everyone's on network and whatever else. So I think, it's probably fair to say that these elements are driving greater demand for kind of ControlUp's, end-to-end visibility.
Yeah, I think so for sure. It's always been like the missing piece of the puzzle. When I actually worked in healthcare, just like 18 months ago, even, we were actually exploring with, unfortunately, another thin client provider. And what we found is that we enabled a feature in Citrix called build to lossless. Now, we had done a whole bunch of testing with our doctors and nurses, and they were happy with the image quality, but we thought, hey, and we did this on Windows devices at the time to test this build to lossless feature, and they were very happy with it. So we deployed these endpoints, and it was a complete disaster. Didn't work at all. We had artifacts all over the place. Unfortunately, the vendor had a version of Citrix that was like 4.0 or something like that, and build lossless, I think, was 4.9. So at the time, I was personally investigating IGEL to see if it could solve it, because IGEL, you guys are a Linux-based OS. You actually deploy new versions of Citrix Receiver on your OS pretty regularly. So this was a pretty killer feature, I thought. If you guys could support it, that would be awesome, because we already did all this work. Unfortunately, I don't know where that went. I left and joined ControlUp. So, but I think if we had that capability of seeing into the endpoint, we'd be able to see, was it a CPU issue? Like, were the endpoint's not powerful enough, or was it the version of Citrix, right, that was on the endpoint? That was my suspicion, but very possibly it could have been a CPU issue, because these were, very thin ARM devices that probably maybe it was that being the issue. So without that visibility, you're flying blind, right? You don't know why features work or don't work.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think and especially when you talk about moving someone from a physical PC over to a virtual desktop, I mean, that experience has to be the same or better. It's just doomed to fail, right? So being able to have that visibility, I mean, Director gives you some stuff out of the box, but it's not giving you for you, it's control. What I always liked about it wasn't just about monitoring, it was about operations as well. It has some nice built-in operation features. And now being able to see what's coming at the endpoint, I think is truly valuable. So we did have a couple questions pop in as well, so I want to hit those. So we were talking a little bit about kind of TCO and kind of repurposing endpoints, and a question came in, and what is the average number of users on a VDI or a virtual desktop where it makes more budget sense in the long run versus physical endpoints? And kind of take from both you guys, right? Obviously, from an IGEL perspective, you guys obviously help with that, but just curious what your thoughts are. It's kind of a loaded question, but do you have any kind of insights there?
Like, so the tipping point for when you want to go with essentially like a VDI desktop versus having a fat client?
Yeah, that was kind of the question. Yeah, what is the average number of users on in a virtual desktop scenario where it makes more budget sense in the long run versus physical endpoints? I mean, it all depends. It's not all just budget, right? It also can depend on use cases and security concerns. There's a lot of different scenarios, but
sure.
I guess in general, yeah.
This is probably I'm gonna almost kind of pitch this back a little bit to you, Shane. I mean, because some of this to me feels it's like a Citrix question, right? Because when clients start talking about VDI, if we're talking about like an actual like full VDI persistent desktop for everybody, right? What you simply are doing is shifting costs, right? You're taking costs from the endpoint and then you're shifting back to the data center. The reality is at least from my experience, giving everyone a full VDI session versus like a server-based desktop, there's a huge difference there. Not the end user, the experience for most end users is gonna be the same. I'm gonna log in, I'm gonna see a start menu, see some icons with apps and launch them. But from a density standpoint, if you go with the server-based desktop, you get much greater density. So that sizing, I say generally speaking, I'll be daring and say that that once you get into larger type enterprises over several hundred users, as long as you're sizing right and you're deploying server-based desktops to the users that it makes the most sense for, and limiting your use of like heavy duty VDI, so those power users that need them, you can make a very compelling case on almost all situations that the overall total cost of management and everything like that is almost always favored in terms of a let's call it intelligent workspace versus VDI, because I feel like VDI is a loaded term. Now, look, I mean, that does presume that you have network connectivity out to all those users all the time, right? So if you've got people on submarines, you know, a little trickier. But overall, like I said, I think the biggest challenge that I've seen in my experience is that people think, oh, I'm going to go VDI wall to wall, like I said earlier, and I don't care if you're using HCI or, you know, hyperconverged infrastructure or not, you're still going to see very low density. You see a few hundred users per node, you know, versus potentially 1,000 users if you go with, you know, with a server-based desktop and you do your app layering correctly.
Well, I think too,
yeah, I mean, okay.
Yeah, I'll add a quick piece there, right? I mean, very succinct to the current situation. You have this, right? Everyone's working from home, working from anywhere scenario, right? It's becoming more prevalent, you know, and so your ability to, you know, kind of scale that VDI environment can become tough, right? I mean, Citrix offers a great solution with Citrix Cloud and those, right? But how do you scale up quickly? Obviously, the cloud's being leveraged to do that, to scale up and out quickly more than ever. Those costs are shifting from like capital expenditures, which is kind of like burning cash, to more your operational side of spending money on things like cloud and things like those things, which becomes, I think, super relevant, where VDI, I think, is becoming more of a mainstream application. It's always kind of lived in this gray area limbo, where now, I mean, it's, you know, apps, data, workspaces are becoming kind of the three staples of working from anywhere and how to do those. And obviously the cloud and those pieces are shifting, and things like Citrix Cloud and, you know, ControlUp for monitoring end to end with what we do just really becomes that, you know, 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there too, as well as it's not always going to be cheaper, right? To go in and just look at it as a cost savings is kind of not the right approach, right? It's more about the flexibility and the security and the experience that you're going to be able to, you know, provide the end user, especially in the modern world that we're in today with the modern workspace and, you know, new features and functionalities that are provided through Windows 10 and Microsoft and stuff. So I think that answers the question well. And if it doesn't, feel free to submit another question and we'll try to get back to you. We want to hit some of these other ones here. I do want to come back to.
I was going to throw out one quick comment too. Is that, I mean, one of the clients that we cite is Luxottica. I mean, they were managing 700 retail locations with one person, right? So, you know, and that's, you know, like there's no way you can do it with fat clients, just because, you know, user error alone is going to require like a help desk of 3 or 4 for 7,000 retail locations, right? So,
yeah,
you know,
and that's a soft cost, right? That you have to look at as well, right? There's a lot of companies just like, well, what am I going to save on my CapEx? You know, I'm just over here just trying to save on, you know, on they're just looking at what they're paying for yearly for physical PCs, but there's a lot more overall from like an operational standpoint that you're going to save going with a model like this. So, so we do have, all right, so we'll pop a couple off the sheet, some of the kind of quick answer ones, and we'll come back in because the questions are coming in like crazy here into the questions chat. Folks are interested. I see the attendance is at 100%, right? So you can see when people are like looking away. So we're breaking the 100 mark here. So couple quick ones here. Let me look here. So on the ControlUp side, I guess this is for you, for Trenton, obviously, because you're the only gentleman here from ControlUp. But how does ControlUp differentiate itself from Citrix Performance Analytics, right? Director is kind of built in, but Performance Analytics from Citrix is an add-on, right? And so anything you could talk to there, I think would help answer that for that person that asked.
Sure. So obviously, ControlUp and Director and Citrix Performance Analytics, one of the big differentiators is that, or actually, let me take a step back and let's talk about Citrix Performance Analytics. So almost everything Citrix Performance Analytics does, ControlUp does as well. We overlap a lot in that space. Obviously, we're both monitoring, you know, Citrix environments and other pieces of infrastructure, and so we connect into Citrix through our EUC. So there's a lot of overlap there with regards of capabilities, and that's just on the purely monitoring side. Where ControlUp differentiates itself is obviously we're real time, so everything that you see within the console is like by default it's updated by 3-second intervals. So you get, like, if you want to know the state of someone, you just look at the console. You don't have to open up a dashboard. You don't have to try to suss out information. Right. You just look at it, right? So is someone active? The console tells you. Is someone idle? The console tells you. So that's a big differentiator. And then we also do management, and we also, you know, I meant to bring this up as well. We also manage IGEL devices. We can right click on them. We can actually access the IMI API and talk to the IGEL UMS and actually do IGEL management actions and get information back and build some reports that way. And we can do that with Citrix, and we can do that with all of the objects within the console. So if you want to log someone off, you can do that. If you want to start a process in a user session, you can do that. If you want to start a process on the virtual machine itself, you can do that. There's an incredible amount of features. We can compare, registries across different users. So if you wanted to compare like group policies, you can do that across all of the users.
Those operational features that you offer, just super valuable when you look at troubleshooting. And you've done some awesome deep dive troubleshooting videos, which I love, on kind of scenarios and how you solve them very quickly. So I think that's definitely different. That's a huge differentiator right there. It's not just about the analytics, but it's how do you solve the problem, right? You don't have to go into another console, another solution to do that. So I think that's pretty sweet. And just following up on the monitoring, there was a question here and about just are you able to get statistical data from applications that are installed in a Citrix non-persistent Windows 10 desktop?
Yes, for sure. So if we've got an agent that you install on your machine, if you do that, then we have access to the process level information. And using performance counters or other sources of data that we can collect, you can get information on the process. So is it using a lot of network? Is using a lot of network activity, sends, receives? What's the CPU utilization? And with Windows 10, 1809 or Server 2019 newer versions, we can actually collect the user experience. So we can actually see through the user input delay performance counter, like what your actual user experience is. When you click on a menu, how long does it take for that menu to draw? We measure all of that information.
Yeah, I think that's pretty powerful, because when you look at like Citrix, if you're getting kind of round trip time, they'll show you kind of RTT for ICA, but you're able to see from the user experience perspective, which I think is pretty powerful. We did have a question come in, which I think is pretty cool, because it's a joint question for you both. And it's really around USB soft phone apps and headsets. Is it a bad idea using those on IGEL? And is there a way to monitor the audio and video streams with ControlUp? And it's a good question, because there's a lot of companies. I know I worked with a few over the course of what happened over the last several months, where people had to get their call centers and move their workers from home, and they had to go into that soft phone model. So in that scenario, what are your thoughts on using a soft phone with IGEL and kind of be monitored with ControlUp?
Want me to take that one, Carl?
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I mean, it depends on the software manufacturer, but Mike, talk about it.
Yeah, no, we absolutely provide that, right? I mean, one of the staples of IGEL is our peripheral integration. I mean, look, we understand at the end of the day, right, when you're shifting from an operating system like Windows, where you can plug anything in and it just kind of functions or somewhat functions, right? That's got to be critical, especially for enterprises. So obviously, USB headsets, those sort of things are priorities for us. So there's obviously, testing the model that you have, and we do have an HCL both in our IGEL knowledge base as well as our community that can kind of give you some roundabout ways to figure that out. But yeah, we can absolutely do that. And then shifting this over to Trenton, obviously our abilities to integrate with Citrix and some of the HDX redirections and whatnot, and give virtual channel possibilities back is a huge piece. And then to Trenton, the ControlUp integration should round that off nicely.
Yeah, we offer, obviously, just to be straight, ControlUp doesn't dive into the virtual channels by default. But what we offer is we offer the ability to do so through extending our product. And we actually have written a number of scripts, and we call them script actions, where you can actually right click on an object and get that visibility and that information. So we actually do offer the ability to look into the HDX virtual channels, and you can see their activity. Are they actually producing data or not? And you can do that by right clicking on any user and actually just exposing that through script.
Cool.
Yep, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a good answer. Like you said, you have visibility, because it's not just, a soft phone isn't just about it. It's a use case that's highly dependent on a lot of things, right? It's a performance inside of the desktop, as well as the network latency, as well as the physical endpoints. You have to have the end-to-end visibility. A follow-up question came in. I don't know if it was from the same gentleman or not. It's not actually, because I could see who asked it. But what is a good way to troubleshoot random, layer 7 client side latency while with LAN latency staying stable? So the WAN latency stable, but the client side, or sorry, the random layer 7 client side latency is kind of all over the board. So more on the obviously the presentation side and the app side of things. So I guess that's more for you, Trenton.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what they're actually looking for. So they have a remote client who's connecting in just fine, but the machine inside the network is having issues.
Yeah, it'd be good. I guess it'd be good to understand the question a little more. My assumption is, and I guess the gentleman that asked, I don't want to call you out there, but if you want to just ask a follow-up and maybe just paste a little bit of information about the scenario, would be good. My assumption when I'm reading it is that, you know, the latency seems okay, you know, from the client side, but the app performance is like crap in the OS. You know, maybe the apps are running slower. There's latency when you're clicking around, but the network latency looks okay. So maybe that's something. It could be app related. It could be the app has, you know, it's a multi-tiered app where, you know, the app is making database calls and there's latency there. So, oh, he just wrote back. He said the layer 7 client side latency through the ADM is really high, but it shows the WAN latency is really high, but it shows the WAN latency is high. Sorry. Oh, so WAN latency is normal, but the client side latency in layer 7 and ADM is really high.
It's more like work from anywhere, kind of like, hey, I'm at home and my network's saturated.
You have to be someone off. I mean, it's WAN, so it's got to be off network. But I think that goes into some of the ability that you guys have.
Yeah, work from home. Yeah.
Look at, you know, specific application performance, what's happening within that machine, and what would be causing that latency. So I assume that, you know, you go to the networking team and they go, everything looks good from our end, right? You know, we're not seeing, you know, anything, and so we don't know what's going on. So you have to then figure out, okay, why is this user complaining about a bad experience if I'm not seeing anything kind of from a network layer, network traffic latency issue? To me, that's like part of the reason why you have control in the first place at a fairly high level, though, right?
Yep, for sure. So I mean, like for ControlUp, when you're talking about like all these third-party components that go into an application, like when I was working in healthcare, Meditech reached out to I think 26 different file servers to pull down information when you logged on. So if one of those file servers had a problem, then you know your login experience was going to suffer. And what we can do is obviously you just install our agent on all those boxes. We don't just monitor Citrix and the Citrix servers. You can monitor your infrastructure with ControlUp, so you can see if the CPU utilization is high. You can see if your network stats are not looking good. We've got a bunch of different network stats within ControlUp that you can monitor at the same time to try to narrow that down.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that makes perfect sense there. And I guess kind of to follow on to that, you know, there was a question kind of about IGEL gateway and managing devices at home that was kind of on the sheet here. And I think that kind of ties into what the gentleman was asking as well, because it seems in his scenario he doesn't have any visibility to the IGEL at his house, so he doesn't have that endpoint visibility. So can that be done through the IGEL gateway to be able to get that visibility? Obviously, ControlUp isn't going to, you know, report that in, right? Because that's not on the same network. You know, that's at home. So I guess what's your thoughts there?
I mean, there's a few things. I'll jump in and talk a little bit about secure shadowing. So if you have the UMS server, which is our management server, and you can extend that capability like for remote over internet users using our ICG product, our Internet Cloud Gateway. Built into that is something called secure shadowing, which gives you the ability to, as the name would suggest, securely see what's exactly going on that user's desktop and take some control. So there's one level of troubleshooting you can do with that. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the other things you can do with ICG in terms of trying to just troubleshoot a user calling in and just saying I'm having bad experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think ControlUp still is super relevant there, right? Because obviously the ICG, not obviously, but the ICG is acting as just a proxy for the IGEL device management, right? So the latency you should be seeing is on the management of the IGEL device, the Citrix connection, right? All those other pieces are going out a separate protocol, a separate piece. So there really isn't, you know, anything over outside of managing that device that should be ICG centric. Outside of maybe, you know, hey, ControlUp is, you know, stuttering or having problems, then obviously there could be some issues at home. It gets super complex. I think the other thing that's interesting here is that, and I was pulling it up, is that the Federal Communications Commission actually put out and I'll post it here to the organizers and panelists, a link on how to optimize your home network during like a work from anywhere scenario. So like, you know, this might be relevant to either write like a best practice up for your home users to say, look, you know, when mom and dad are working, you can't get on your Xbox, or this is what you do to upgrade your router, right? I mean, those things become super relevant in situations like now about how to do that stuff. So I think that mixed with the fact that from an IGEL perspective, we can monitor ICG requests, and we have some best practice measurements around number of clients associated with that, and then obviously rounding that out with ControlUp monitoring the end-to-end, you know, Citrix connection and what's happening on the endpoint is a pretty good 1-2 punch.
I mean, fundamentally, it's always hard. You can't. But you can't trust the end users. They don't know what's going on, right? And they'll see causation where there's not. I mean, years ago we had a client call and they had a Citrix problem. They logged a Citrix ticket for a remote office or robo office, and it turns out the link was down. Right, so we're doing all kinds of troubleshooting starting at the data center. Everything looks good. The data center started going out, and we realized we can't reach the remote office. So the link was down, but it logged as a Citrix ticket out of the gate. So the more visibility you have to see what's going on versus having to call someone up and be like, hey, tell me what's going on, I think, you know, the faster you're going to get to resolution overall.
Yeah,
So at least from the ControlUp side, we can actually monitor the Citrix session itself, right? So if they're connected in, we can see the bandwidth that they're using and the latency that they have. And we can break that down, whether they're using UDP or TCP as well through the EDT script. So we have visibility into those types of metrics. For IGEL itself, we can actually manage IGEL devices that are from home as long as they've got a Citrix session connected. So as of today, we're checking the client and we're seeing if it's ICT star or something like that, or it has the name IGEL in it. And if you have ControlUp, you can actually do this exact same customization to match your naming scheme, and then you get all the IGEL script actions that you can actually execute from within ControlUp to manage your IGEL devices on the UMS. For actually monitoring them, though, we are currently investigating with IGEL whether we can route our SSH requests through the IGEL UMS in order to pull this information.
Yeah, that'd be really slick.
It's just pie in the sky right now, high level talks, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that'd definitely be cool to get the endpoint data when you're at the house, because if that IGEL client, if you have the gateway, you're already tunneling that traffic back through. You know, if you can just kind of tunnel into that, that'd be kind of cool to get that endpoint. We do have some. It's cool to answer some of the questions that are coming in live, because we know those folks are listening and they have like live questions. So if you have a question that came in, just when using HP Thin clients, the customer is using HP Thin clients, ThinPro OS today. And they want to know how IGEL compares to ThinPro for supporting browser content redirection, as well as how it compares against HPDM versus IGEL in general. I have my opinion, but I will hold my mouth and go ahead and give your thoughts there.
Carl, you want me to take this one?
Yep, go for it.
Awesome. No, that's a great question. Obviously, I think the biggest advantage of IGEL is the way that we kind of integrate all of our session clients in a vanilla format, right? I'm not here to bad talk HP by any reason. I mean, they have we use their hardware all the time for IGEL OS, so I mean they do a great job. I think the ThinPro OS, right, it fits a certain demographic. So from an IGEL perspective, right, we have this nature where we take the client in its purest form and shift it over. That allows us to be nimble. As Shane alluded to much earlier, we're able to actually integrate a lot of different things when it comes to the way that those clients actually function. So we're able to iterate faster and faster. So it makes a lot of sense to kind of focus on, that really speed to make it work. I know one of the things is, my role at IGEL is I focus a lot on the cloud. So when it comes to iterating those cloud clients, right, and being up to date, those are becoming critical. And I know that Dell and HP are, they're trying to figure out exactly, hey, how do we have an Amazon Workspaces client, right? Or how do we do this stuff? How do we integrate, the latest version of the Citrix receiver for Citrix Cloud, right? That becomes a challenge. So I think that's a big plus for us to be able to do that outside of what potentially ThinPro brings to the table. I think the other benefit is really on the device side, right? We're able to take your old devices, repurpose them. We have a large swath, again, HCL, that allows us to manage the hardware compatibility between a lot of those different clients and just, save on those refreshes, where you can take that money and invest it back into Citrix, right? So that you're now expanding that footprint without, spending a lot of money on the devices and securing yourself better, for sure.
I think that's a really important point that Mike makes there, honestly. I mean, we've seen when we go head to head a lot of times, I mean, HP put out a conversion, they put out a conversion software product. It was before I joined IGEL. We had a client do a head to, do a POC. And I mean, after a week, he came back and said, yeah, that's out. We're not going to do conversion with HP. And again, it's just, I think it comes down to focus, right? IGEL, we've pivoted. We are an operating system company. That's where we're putting our resources. That's what we're building out for. I mean, Dell just put out a new version of their Thin OS, and it's great, except unless you've got old devices, because it's not backwardly compatible. So now you're going to be running 2 versions of Thin OS with new Dell devices. It speaks to Dell and HP being focused on thin clients being a device with an embedded operating system, and and that's a different philosophy as it comes to what they're trying to do. So I think again, I'll be a rebel here. I think at some point you'll see that Dell and HP will, and hopefully Dell before HP will realize, why do we want to be in the operating, the edge operating business? We want to make devices. They don't make an OS, they sell Windows with their laptops. So they'll continue to make great thin clients and, just sell them with IGEL OS on them. We do have clients that do that, and Dell will, begrudgingly can ship with IGEL OS on it. You just got to put in a custom config through them. So.
Yep. No, I think that answers the question good, and I have the same opinions. I mean, the greatest thing about for me with IGEL is just the simplicity of the management console and being very similar to like what you would do with Drew policy and be very policy driven and modular. And I think it just makes it really easy to manage. There's a follow-up question here that's super quick, so we'll hit that, and then there's a scenario question. I always like the scenario questions because that's a problem someone's trying to solve right now. But so this is Trent, this for you. What version of ControlUp is needed to manage remote IGEL and for the integration that you guys are talking about?
So right now we're just talking about it with IGEL to see if it's even possible, and we've got some ideas on how to make it possible.
Oh, manage. Oh, sorry, I just saw that. Yeah, that's remote IGEL. Okay, I thought that meant regular. Okay, makes sense.
Oh, sorry.
Cool.
So to manage remote IGEL, any version of ControlUp will work, right? So we do it through the Citrix session. We can detect the client name, and then we can actually execute commands against the IGEL UMS using that client name to pass that to the UMS to say, reboot the machine or apply a new configuration or get the assigned profiles.
Okay, very cool. So the scenario question here is, I have a scenario where anytime I enable the codecs for hardware and media acceleration on my IGEL clients, the user experience is amazing. Woohoo! However, the sessions then randomly disconnect. And then randomly disconnect. Would ControlUp monitoring help isolate this issue? IGEL support currently says talk to Citrix, and Citrix says talk to IGEL, and then they join this webinar for an answer. So don't let them down. Wow, no pressure.
So disconnects, I love disconnects. I actually work with several customers on this exact scenario. When I worked at AHS, we had this exact scenario. It was disconnects are so frustrating because there's not usually a reason for why they happen. They just magically happen. But of course, we all know that there is a reason, right? It's either there's like a network hiccup or potentially the client crashed or something like that caused the disconnect. So ControlUp does have the ability to monitor for state changes, and we can monitor for state changes on the session level. So when a session goes from active to disconnected, we can actually pick up on that. And so what do you do with that information? Well, with ControlUp, we have the automation platform within our product, and that allows us to actually start executing commands as soon as we detect this stuff. So we can start gathering information as soon as that happens, whether that's event logs or even if you were to write a script to connect into your IGEL device, you could pass that in as a parameter, and then it could connect in and try to pull some historical information on like was it on Wi-Fi and did the Wi-Fi connection get dropped or something like that. So unfortunately, every scenario here is probably different. There is no magic bullet answer, but we do offer the capability of detecting when it happens, and then we also offer the ability to automatically run actions so you can try to gather more information to give you that complete picture.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that definitely answers the question. And because when you're these scenarios are a pain in the ass to troubleshoot, and they usually have some correlation to them, and you get that correlation through data, right? So you can kind of build a support matrix. You can kind of start pulling the information from ControlUp as the help desk reports it, and then use that information to correlate as to what exactly is happening and what it, maybe it's a certain client, right? A lot of times it's client related, it could be EDT related, a lot of stuff like that. So that's definitely
starting a microwave in the lunchroom, right? And it causes noise.
So many options for sure. Yeah, it could be my wife on Netflix. We need an automated action to text her or WhatsApp her when my internet's going to crap because she's watching season finale of Vikings or whatever.
We can do that. In my home lab here, I actually have it when I'm on GoToMeeting or Zoom or whatever, it actually changes my lights to be red. So that way my family knows to try to leave me be for
cool. It definitely posts that.
I think it's such an awesome thing. I just saw someone selling a Wi-Fi enabled sign you can put over your door too that just is like on call or in webinar, like almost like the on air things from the old radio shows. So
yeah, it's like because it's the video became like a thing, right? Before it was like I don't want to be on video. I didn't shower for like 3 days. I don't want people to see me and shave. Now it's like every call's video. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just you just join and then there's people on there. It's like you can't not turn the video on, and you're just like that guy that didn't turn the video on. So yeah. Anyways, I digress. So question for the group here, how is VDI more secure? How to make VDI more secure, or virtual desktops? I like the term virtual desktops when VDI is kind of a infrastructure term, right? Just in general, how do you make, I would say, how do you make your workspace more secure? Using, ControlUp and using, IGEL.
It's a multifaceted question, indeed.
It is. It is. I threw it at you guys. Just give me one. How about this? What's one option? One or two options that you feel that your solutions help to provide greater security and to a virtual desktop or workspace.
All right, so I'll do the high level, like, evangelistic, future comment, right? And that's, if we look over, like, I put computing into 3 eras, right? Era 1 was we were all connected to mainframes, not we on this call, because I don't think anyone's that old, right? But you had green screen clients connecting to a centralized computer, and then around when I entered the industry early 90s, right, we were all going distributed computing, and it made sense. There was the network infrastructure wasn't anywhere where it was today. You put all the apps on the device, it worked, right? And Windows was the operating system for that era of computing. We're now moving into a new era of computing, which is where everything's, essentially, which is cloud-based, right? So it's virtual desktops. And I'll break here to make a quick analogy. It's a story I like to tell because I think it's applicable, but it's not super technical, right? I graduated college in the mid 90s. My father pulled me aside upon graduation and said, "Hey, you are now a man." I was Jewish, so it should have been 13, but I guess he waited till college graduation. And he said, "As a man, you should always carry $250 in cash on you. It's an imperative." And I said, "Okay, Pops, you got it." And I went with that concept, right? That paradigm for a long time. Eventually, I realized that's really, really, really bad advice. Because let me tell you about cash. Cash is bearer based. So whoever's holding the dollar owns the dollar, right? Cash has no inherent tracking mechanism. If I spend money and I don't get another piece of paper to track it, I can't tell where the cash is spent. If I burn it, it's fragile, right? So here's where I'll make the analogy, right? If you're keeping applications and data on your device, it's the same as carrying cash, right? It made sense at a certain time, a certain place in time. It made sense in a certain era. But now between credit card, everyone accepts credit cards, right? For my father's era, they didn't, so it made sense, right? They didn't have the infrastructure then, so cash made sense. If you're still working with this 90s mentality issue that it's somehow better to keep apps and data on the device, you're working with a mentality that's kind of rooted. I hate to say it, but in the mid 90s, when we didn't have infrastructure, we could connect all over. So where does it take us? Well, look, I thought this decade was going to be about everyone connecting to a remote cloud workspace. I didn't expect 2020 was going to put a huge catalyst to making it happen with, the UFOs, murder hornets, and a pandemic. But certainly that has been sort of, the fuel to drive greater adoption of this. But once you do that, like I challenge everyone, if you're on the call, I think people fall in one of two camps. Either you've embraced having a web-based drive or you've not, right? I went through that transition. And I resisted a little bit. I'm a little old school in certain ways. But once I embraced having everything on my web-based drive primary, I suddenly realized how dumb it was for me to keep stuff locally, because I can't get it unless I'm right with that freaking device, pardon the language, right? So once you make a shift, you suddenly go, wow, this is a much better way to compute. And I think the same is true once people start embracing remote workspaces. And we're seeing that, right? Like as they're interviewing executives, especially executives because we've look, everyone on this call, everyone that I'm looking at right now, we've been talking to people in the face about the benefits. We've been dangling that carrot of move to VDI to virtual workspaces because you're going to get all these benefits. And right, the CEOs go, well, I like it. I get this. Yeah, I like it the way it is. Right, that inertia was hard to overcome. But once we got them all over it, which is where we are right now, like look at the reports. All these CEOs are going, oh, well, maybe we don't need to put everyone in an office, right? Maybe we, you talk about CEOs when they were being interviewed are saying, hey, the future is going to be a hybrid model, but we all get it now that some people can work remote, right? And I think that's going to be driving a lot of this. Now let's talk about security. What does that mean for security? It means that don't be running a 90s operating system that's fat and bloated and can be riddled with malware and God knows what, to connect to your cloud workspace. Run an operating system that is designed specifically for cloud workspaces, and that's where IGEL comes in. And that's why our operating system is read-only. That's why we use things like UEFI boot, to address that security issue. So I say that, zero trust, not to throw out another buzzword, sorry, but assume zero trust all the way across, all the way down the endpoint, and then select an operating system that's going to be most appropriate for this new era of computing. And I'll step off the soapbox now, but I think this is it's a big deal. It's a
it's definitely it's definitely a loaded question. I think you both offer solutions. ControlUp, my opinion, is more around the type of, well, you can do a lot. Actually, it's not just about monitoring, right? I mean, on your side, it's also, you can take action with those automated actions. When you see things and processes change and things like that, you can actually send alerts and do some cool stuff, right?
Yep, that's right. And events, and we pick up on a lot of data sources.
Yeah, so that's great too. So we're already coming up. I believe, man, time just flies. There's like 3 minutes left. So I want to hit just a couple key, super quick questions, and then I think any final words, and then I know we're gonna have Kimberly come back and talk about the the giveaway, which I think is great. So the quick question here is just for IGEL to take you guys down a notch. You guys are pumped up, excited, and now we're going to ask a question about the product that is related to licensing. So with IGEL, is there a plan to make it easier to deprovision the licenses from machines that have died?
Yes. That's a lightning round.
Beautiful. That's it. That's good.
The question might be when. But we don't have a timeline on that, but we are looking at making it easier. I mean,
that's perfect. And then as far as documentation, there was a question about, hey, this is great stuff, but how do we learn more? How to document? How do we read about your product? How do we watch videos? That kind of stuff. Do you guys have a YouTube channel or documentation? Docs.igel, whatever. What do you got to let? Obviously, your community is huge on Slack. I mean, I think that's great.
So there's IGEL launched IGEL Academy, which is an online learning management system. I think it's learn.igel.com. I'm going to check that right now. But yeah, learn.igel.com takes you to IGEL Academy. So I definitely suggest you check that out. And we've got Mike Barmonti on the phone, who's got probably some of our most watched videos right now on YouTube. So
nice.
The stuff he's been doing there. If you ever have a question like, how do I connect my IGEL to WBD, Mike puts up a great. I mean, they're not that long, and they show you exactly how it works. So, plus, if you're not joined IGEL community, run by Doug A. Brown, DABCC, Citrix SC of the year, 2003, first year they were issued. SC of the year,
2003.
The Slack community there is incredible. You got any question about anything, you go on there, post them in Slack, and chances are you're gonna get an answer pretty quickly. So I'd say those are three. YouTube for sure. Learn.igel.com and check out the IGEL community. Would be three great ways to increase your know-how.
I'll add one more real quick, is Reddit. You go to reddit.com/r/IGEL. You can engage in conversation there as well.
Cool. Awesome. And I guess, Trenton, do you guys have a kind of a good spot for videos? And I know you post a lot of nice kind of technical videos out there. What other kind of central spots do you have for control where people can kind of get going with it?
Yeah, so obviously the ControlUp website, we've got our blog articles that we post on as often as we can write the content for. And then above and beyond that, we're on the world of EUC, so we've got several people monitoring the ControlUp channel there. So any questions that are on the world of EUC Slack, we're on there and we're engaged with the community there. So I also want to give a shout out, to what Doug's doing with the community, IGEL community Slack. Man, that place is just amazing, just amazing. That's really well done.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, I think he said it was like 5,000 users or something, like just
any question at all. There's 30 people lining up to give you an answer. It's amazing. It's been really helpful.
Nah, totally.
Working on the custom partition part.
Awesome. So last question here. We're already over a minute. So I guess if you want to pop back with the giveaway, we can do that now. And while we're waiting, multi-monitor, do any of your thin clients offer multi-monitor support?
Mike,
they all do. So
which Magic devices offer multi-monitor support?
UD2, UD3, and UD7. So actually all of them do.
All of them do that.
Yeah.
There you go. Beautiful.
UD3 has more capabilities in terms of, I think, codecs, and if you're going to be pushing a lot of multimedia out.
Yeah, the new UD3. Yep,
sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's it for the questions. We obviously ran out of time, but you know, if there's other questions, I guess send them in and we'll try to get something out posted. And with that, we'll hand it off to Stephanie.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Really quick before I get to the t-shirt question, just a reminder that we do have lots of virtual events going on still. Our United Kingdom group has their day-long Excel event next week. And today is the Kansas City meeting. And I think, Carl, did you say you were going to be on that?
We're doing live trivia on the Kansas City meeting with a prize for every correct answer. So bring your thinking caps, bring your drink. It's going to be a lot of fun. We get crazy.
So, there's links in the chat for you guys. There's a link to our events calendar. You can get more information on all of these, and also a link to that survey that I mentioned. And now for the question. Okay, which one of these is not a CUGC group? So the first 5 that get the right answer, and let me pull the question panel out really quickly so I can see who's typing.
Dope looking shirt. So that's the 2020 shirt. Nice.
That's correct. So we didn't go to Synergy, so this is what you would have gotten if you had. All right, I see one person who has the right answer. Let me see. 2. This one must be hard. I'll have to remember this for a local meeting. Good trivia question. So far, I see Chris Round and James De La Rosa. You guys got it. Roger Hart.
The question for all those international technology men and women of mystery. Jet setting around from exotic location to exotic location, deploying virtual desktops, saving the world.
Joe Francisco. Come on, one more before I reveal it.
Well, just guess. You got a 33% chance of getting it right.
Wow, this is a super hard question. I love it.
Numbers. Stephanie's a tough dungeon master.
Wow.
That's a good one. I definitely, I don't know the answer.
It's
Phone a friend.
All right. Here we go. Last one. Rodney Barnhart. Okay. Congratulations, you guys. So the answer is Greece. We don't have a CUGC in Greece. We do have Adelaide and Romania.
All right, so that's an objective for someone to go start one right now. And we have someone listening from Greece.
We did get someone request Greece recently, so we just need an end user leader. Anybody on the call in Greece?
Make it happen. Let's go.
Make it happen. And finally, I know some of you guys might have opted in to possibly win one of our $300 gift cards. I am only going to award that to someone who attended, so I'm waiting till after the webinar is over, and I'm going to pull the attendance report from GoToWebinar, and I will use a number randomizer in Google, and I will tweet it out. So be sure you follow us on Twitter at MyCUGC. And you'll have your choice of Apple, Amazon, Google Play. I think last time everybody picked Amazon. That's like the most common one, but we like to give you options. All right, and that is it. I just want to thank all of you for being with us today. I appreciate everybody on the call. Mike, Carl, Trenton, Shane, thanks again for being here. And thanks to everyone who attended.
Thanks,
thank you. Come join us
Carl's
again.
dog, I see your dog.
Stay safe, guys, and you Citrix users out there. We all appreciate you guys at every aspect. You guys keep us afloat. You're everything to us. So thank you. Truly, be safe, please.
Yeah, definitely. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you again, and I look forward to having you on and joining us for another Ask Me Anything, hopefully sometime soon.
Yep, there's one more coming. We have to schedule it, but we'll let you know.
All right.
Thanks all.
Done.
Bye.
All right, take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye.